Hello, I'm David Hunt, and welcome to my little segment of the show. My guest today, forging a career in fashion and interior design with community aspects, arts curating, graduated from the National School of Art School in Sydney, up in Sydney, was born in Brisbane, worked in fashion advertising, developing concepts for major brands, lived in New York and worked in New York, as you do, returned to freelancing styling for magazines and in-house design for major retail stores. Lectured at his old school in Sydney, which is fantastic. I think that's really good. Worked with fashion icons and designers like Elle Macpherson, Sarah Murdoch and Alex Perry, just to name a few. And all of a sudden developed this passion for fine arts and lifestyle production. But now he has got this incredible space here in St Kilda at Artist Studios, a couple of galleries and a lifestyle store as well, and it's called Storehouse. So my guest today, Thomas Burke, hello.
Hello.
Let's start. You were a Brisbane born, but you were only there for a short time.
I was born in Brisbane. My mother literally drove, I believe, from Melbourne with my two sisters and myself in her stomach to have me in Brisbane because my father was leaving for Vietnam. So I was born in Brisbane, the whole family's based there, but we grew up very much in Sydney.
Right, hold on. You just said your father went to Vietnam?
Yeah, I believe he was, when she was driving up to Brisbane, he was at Puckapunyal, I think, training. He was a military man, so he was being deployed to Vietnam. So he waited till I was born and left 3 days later.
So how long before you actually met him?
He had long deployment. He did 3 deployments, I believe. So
in Vietnam?
In Vietnam,
wow.
Yeah, back and forward, and probably 2 by the time he was back full time.
And how did you react to it? Were you a bit nervous of meeting this person that's called your father?
I don't really remember.
Okay.
I remember that we had quite a strained relationship, but I think we were both very strong. And I think more than anything, he felt that he'd missed out on something more than anything, and he never knew quite how to bridge that gap.
Right.
I think that may have been the issue more so than with me.
And also the military, you're very sort of guarded, aren't you?
Very, very, very guarded, and he was very much a military man.
Right.
Service duty. Which is something I very much admired about him. But it was, we didn't touch a lot. I was the first son, and I saluted him till I was probably about 10 years old. When I saw him, he'd come home at night, and I'd, evening, sir.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so it was interesting. But my mother was much more tactile and still as fiery, but very much tactile. So
right.
there was a balance.
Did you come out, as a gay man to him? Because would that been a shock?
Look, I don't think it would have been a shock. I have heard over the years from my mother and from his comrades that he would have been okay with it.
Oh, brilliant.
He had obviously within the military, there was that old policy of, don't discuss it, but everybody knew. So I know that his drivers were queer women. I don't know about the men. I don't remember the men. I certainly remember the women.
Okay.
And the racks, I believe they were called then. And I think he had good relationships with them, and I think he was pretty good on that level. And I think it was pretty obvious with me. And I'm not saying that I was particularly camp or whatever, but I think I just never had a problem. My sexuality was something that was quite natural.
Right.
For
Okay.
me.
Yeah. So you just sailed through it.
I kind of sailed through it, and I am who I am. And if you've got a
Yep.
problem with it, then let's have a chat about it. But it was pretty easy, I think, for me.
Brilliant. School. How did it go at school for you?
I wouldn't say I loved it, but the privileges that I got were great, and I had a lot of freedom because, again, I demanded my freedom there, and they didn't know what to do with me. Private boys' school with someone who was cared about. I used to run my school pants in so that they were stovepipes, and I used to wear an earring during the weekend every year, and I used to wear a ring. I mean, this was outrageous for a private boys' school.
Yeah.
And I was just very strong, and I wanted to do art, and I wanted to do design. And at 16, when I said I want to be a fashion designer, and I want to go and do design, and I want to go to art college, whilst I was rowing in the first 8, playing football, and doing quite well with my studies, they just did not know what to do. So
Right.
they very much left me alone.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you left school, you went off to the art college is that the one that in Darlinghurst?
It's in Darlinghurst. So it was
Right,
the old
okay.
jail in
Yeah,
Darlinghurst.
beautiful.
Yeah. So one campus, we had fine arts and we had fashion design on the same
Yep.
campus there.
And how did you find that? You would
It
have
was
been
a shock for me. It was a shock for me. So for all how different I thought I was and how outrageous I thought I was and how much I was very much my own man, when I got to Darlinghurst from Mossman, I was like the bank. I used to be referred to as the bank teller because I was really quite conservative compared to these people.
Yeah, well, the upbringing with your father and a
absolutely.
boys' school or
Very,
boys' school.
very sheltered on that level. Very sheltered on that level. So yeah, I came into a community where, I was walking up my first day at college, and I was. There was a drag queen sitting on the stairs who refused to move for me, and I did not know what to do with myself. Benina Bob, I remember. And I said, "Oh, excuse me," and she said to me, "I already have, Dar." And I was like, I did not know what to do. So it was a very big shock to me.
Yeah. But what about studying? Did you enjoy that?
Look,
and was getting the benefit of what you
I
wanted
loved
to do?
it. I loved it, and I loved the whole community that I came into, and it was probably some of the best years of my life at that
Brilliant.
that college. I did discover that I was not the best designer on the planet.
Oh, okay.
I think one of the greatest things you can do at college or in your education is to discover maybe what you're not good at. And I wasn't a great designer. I was a very good stylist. I had a really good eye. I could pull collections together. So I was at college with Nikki Zimmerman, Akira Sagawa, people like that who were super and are superstars of design, and I could style their collections together.
Yep.
But mine, not so much.
Yep.
So that's where I learnt my strength. I learnt that I was a really good stylist.
And you developed concepts for, like within magazines and newspapers and one of the big department stores as well.
Yeah, we when I came out of college again, just forged my way through the industry, pushed my way in through doors, built myself up. I mean, that is what I learnt from my schooling, was to really be very confident. So I was very confident, and I got myself into places that I probably shouldn't have been.
Yep.
Young boys with big guns, we used to say. We had campaigns. I worked for Artisan. I worked for when Sky Garden was launched, which was huge in Sydney. It was the most glamorous department store in Sydney. We worked on that, and I worked. And I also didn't have an ego about it too, so I could work with a lot of different styles.
Yep.
And I could work with really young, funky labels, and I could work with very conservative labels, and I could do it quite well. Didn't have an ego. I loved what I did. I knew I was good at it. And it was a world where I just got to play and indulge myself, and it was fun, and it was frivolous, and it was a great time.
I could imagine. New York, lived and worked there. How did you get to go there?
I think that was the point where I was saying it was frivolous and it was fun. There was also this part of me that, from that military background, from my mother being a businesswoman, I was like, none of this is very serious. I've got to get serious. I'm going to be an image consultant, which was a big thing in those late 90s. I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to study to be an image consultant because that will be something that's worthwhile. So I again found myself somewhere in New York, booked myself into a school there and went to New York and studied there and lived there and had a great time and wild, over the top, and exactly what you'd think.
Yeah.
New York people are like.
Yeah.
Women in furs. It was just an amazing, fun time, but it was not for me. For me, it was too much.
Were you out then by that stage?
Yeah, it was very much out there
Right.
by then.
So did you, because we know about New York, how famously gay it can be.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
As much as I say it was my journey of my sexuality was something that was very natural. It was also probably something that I wasn't overly confident with. Getting it. It was like I had because it was such a conservative background. Then I continued that conservatism through to my sexuality. So I was like, I have to have a partner, and we have to be, meat and three veg type thing. Very simple. So I'm in New York with all this around me, but I had a partner in Sydney that no, I'm very much committed, and so I went to clubs and I misbehaved and all the rest of it. But and there was some fun people I met, and I went to some amazing clubs.
But you would have also been around so many like people from the LGBTIQ
Absolutely,
community.
all the time, and that's what I lived in. But I was again quite conservative in my views.
Okay. Yep. And so you had a partner back in Sydney.
I had a partner back in
Did
Sydney.
that fall apart while you were away, or?
No, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So he was 10 years older than me. So you've got to remember, when I came back, when I first left school, before I went to college, I went to London, and in London, I literally came out, with travelling with some Australian friends through Scotland and Ireland and London. And then, so I sort of came out there. That was my first major experience.
Was your dad still around then, or not?
He wasn't. He died.
Okay.
So that's why I'd gone travelling. At 18, I'd gone.
Right. And what about your mum? Yeah,
she was around.
And
she
you
was
told
around.
her? And
Look, I arrived back from London, got home, I opened my suitcase. I went, oh, there's a picture of my boyfriend. She went, great, that's lovely, dear. And how was your trip? And my sisters went, cool, we've got a gay brother. It was like the coolest thing they could think of. But that was like the greatest trauma of my company. There wasn't there. But what I did do is I came back into the AIDS epidemic. I arrived back into it. I'd heard about it, we'd hearing about it in London. So It's a Sin. That was a bit like my life.
Yep.
I was like, we were hearing about it, and I came back to Sydney and it was in full swing. So I spent from 19 to probably 24 on every committee, on doing every fundraiser. And
good on you.
It was living, breathing Oxford Street, the Mardi Gras,
Yep.
the winter balls, the sleaze
Yep.
balls, all of it. Did all of that, but in a very conservative way. I'd always go home to my partner.
So when did that relationship break down?
That broke down. He actually, I moved down to Victoria, he followed me, he stayed for a while, he eventually ended up going back to Sydney.
Right, okay.
Very much a great love of my life. Very, very.
You still in contact?
No, he died about 6 years ago.
Okay.
From cancer. So he was HIV positive from the day I met. So literally in those days, everyone you met, you declared your status on the first date in the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
So I was with him for 8, 9 years. He was 10 years older than me. His friends were 10 years older than him. So I was, again, in that world, I was very much in the Capriccios world, all of that, the Oxford Street, all the old
We probably bumped into each other.
Most
because
probably.
I was living in Elizabeth Bay in that era.
That's right, I was living in Elizabeth Bay.
Wow.
And Darlinghurst and the Black and White Ball and Candy and all the old drag queens used to come over to our place and they'd produce shows for them. And so it was a great time, but it was a confronting time because people were dying left, right, and centre around us, but it also it bonded the community. We were such a strong community.
Yep.
We were out there. We were one of my great memories was Fred Nile, the week before Mardi Gras, did a march along the Mardi Gras route to protest. And everyone was like, oh my God, this is going to get public. This is not great. And so just a ripple went out through the community that said, everybody go out, everybody support it, everybody turn up at his march. And everybody did, and it was the biggest party, and it just took the wind out of their sails because it was just like a second party for us. It was great. So I remember that strong, that bonding, such a strong world, such a strong community, and so much fun. And so intense, but so amazing.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Now, you worked with some big fashion icons as well.
Yeah.
Was in, like Elle Macpherson, you can't get much bigger in Australia fashion world.
She was the face of Sky Garden. So
okay. Right. And, like rubbing shoulders with people like that, how did you, was it a natural thing?
my private school upbringing came out a lot.
Right.
And I channeled my mother a lot. So a lot of I was very confident, overtly confident on the outside.
Yeah.
So when I say I was at these queer community events, you know, on the other hand, I was at the Smart openings, I was at the Cointreau Ball, I was on shoots, I was doing all that sort of thing, which was quite a separate world as well. And those people, I think I just was overtly, I just put on a facade, I put on my big boy plan.
And they're just people at the end of the day.
They were just people, and I think I probably have enough, maybe too much sort of sense of self that I wasn't particularly intimidated. I was excited, but I was not particularly intimidated, and I had a good time.
Now, all of a sudden, you moved to Victoria, not to Melbourne. Where did you go?
So I was 28 years old, and I don't know if it had to do with astrology. It was also my Saturn return, so my greatest life choices. So I was 28, and I did look at myself again with that overconfidence, and went, well, I'm 28. I've done everything I wanted to do. I'm a fashion editor. I've lived in New York. I've done this. I've partied. I've been very successful with what I started to do. I want to do something different. I don't want to wake up when I'm 40. I've got this amazing portfolio, but I'm not, you know, it gets me jobs, but am I proud of it? Maybe not. I want to maybe do something that when I wake up when I'm 40, I want to be proud of. My family, whilst I'm in Sydney doing all the stuff that I was doing, had also started to shift towards being a little bit more conscious of sustainability and spirituality and all that type of thing, and it all moved up to Byron Bay. So in the holidays, I'd go up to Byron Bay and I'd sit on mountains and in Mullumbimby, literally doing spiritual retreats. And then I'd go back to Sydney and I'd be at cocktail parties and doing the rest of it. And I just went, well, maybe I'm going to give that side of me a chance. And the family had then moved down to South Gippsland, the beautiful part of Victoria, South Gippsland. And they were like, come and live down here. And I was like, okay. I sold my apartment in Sydney, my car, every one of my designer suits. And within about 3 or 4 months, I went to live on a mixed shared farm on the Dole when I was 29 years old with nothing. And it was probably the worst couple of years of my life.
I could imagine after the lifestyle you were living.
It just shocked me to the core.
Yeah.
It shocked me to the core, and I was hand milking at 5:30 in the morning in South Gippsland in the middle of winter with turkey blood on my, you know, shiny bloodstones, and no money. And it was a really, really interesting experience, and it really knocked me around, and it really made me grow up. It made me rethink who I was. It made me rethink what was important in life. It certainly made me rethink, and I would, even now, I would say I don't know that I'd do it again if I knew that's how I was going to feel and how it was going to be, because it was shocking.
So how did you turn it around?
I was. I was sitting on my bed in a rented house with flatmates that I couldn't stand, with my mother in my underwear and an old singlet, watching Mardi Gras on television. And I thought, I was there, I was in that, and look at this, what am I doing? And I just went, I got to change this.
Yeah.
And I just went, I have nothing, but I know I'm good at making something out of nothing. So my sister had a very extensive wardrobe from when she was married and being whatever she was doing. And I went, I could start a secondhand clothing shop. In a little room, in a little house that's in the little village that we lived in. I could stick a sign up because I know about clothes, and I can start a secondhand clothing store. And that's what I did with my sister's old wardrobe.
Wow.
And it just sort of grew from there. And I started meeting artists that were down there. I started meeting all these creatives. A lot down there too, isn't there? There's a lot down there, and these amazing creative people that I started meeting. My sister had a food and wine store. I went into that to work on that with her. But my love was the arts and fashion and clothing, and it just kind of grew from there. And I realised that firstly I'd learnt to serve, I'd learnt not to be served. Which was my entire life was about me being the centre of attention. And I'd learned through the farming and being knocked down a few pegs that I actually was quite good at serving and being out there and supporting people and I guess being more giving and supportive of other people, and that's where it grew from.
Right.
So I suddenly had a second-hand clothing store in South Gippsland.
So what brought you into Melbourne?
And then so that grew and grew, and then it turned into, I had some support from some people from my background who came in and helped me, and the store became more of a. I started stocking other labels. I started getting out of the second hand. I started getting into more sustainable clothing, into more ethically made clothing and products. And with that, I wanted some art. So I met artists. I started putting art in the store. And suddenly I did have the Storehouse, which was this store that represented artisan makers, small makers that were making stuff that was ethical, that was made with love, that actually contributed to the planet, that meant something that would last, that supported the wider community. And I was like, this is what I went through that whole transition with. I could take all those skills that I naturally had and I'd learned, and I could apply them to something that actually meant more to me and was going to contribute in a bigger way. And I would wake up by this stage I'm far past 40, but I'm like, I can actually live with myself and go, I'm actually contributing here. I'm actually doing what I might even have considered my purpose, which was to really highlight value and worth in things, as opposed to just being.
All of a sudden you end up in Melbourne with a storehouse here. Small, it was on Barclay Street. And you were there for a few years. I can remember even popping in. Late last year, you moved around the corner. There's 2 galleries there. You've got a whole string of artists that work, like from potters, handbag makers, painters, like
shoes, clothing, accessories, the whole lot.
Everyone's in there, out the back in all these little areas, and it's this beautiful store that you've got where you're putting on exhibitions as well for the artists.
We had the Gippsland store, and then we opened the St Kilda store because I thought, I want to come back into that. I want to put my foot back into the big world. And I did that, and that was St Kilda. And then, of course, during COVID, it was just too difficult to keep the 2 stores going. And then it got to the point, again, where there was this big pivot where I was with retail, was dying, so especially small retail. And it was a matter of, I'm not going to survive this. These people, the people I represent, aren't going to. And I think my drive was that not that I'm not going to survive because I'll live, but these people that I represent, they're not going to survive. Their passion, what they do is not going to be seen. It's not going to be showcased. It's not going to, and it's not going to continue. So it was like, go big or go home. And I knew I couldn't stay where I was in the little Barclay Street store. So it was a matter of, again, what resources, and I mean, by this stage, I'm not making money here. I haven't made money since I was 28, but how do I, again, with no resources, create something that I'm proud of and that I want to go into the future? And it was, again, ducking and weaving, asking people, beg, borrowing, stealing, using every contact I had. And I've had some really lovely mentors over the years. And I basically swung this big property around the corner that was 6 times the size. And I thought, I can bring the people in here. And this is collaboration. So I'd had the community for years in Koonwarra and down in South Gippsland, and then I'd gone on my own a bit with Barclay Street. And this was me going back into community, which always terrifies me because, change is always difficult. And for me, community sometimes challenges me a lot. Because I want to be the dominant one, but in community you have to work together. So I created Storehouse Kilda now, which is the biggest space, which is very much a community. It's very much people being supported, supporting each other. And that's the amazing thing that I find, is that I think I'm going out there supporting other people, but I'm constantly amazed by what people do to help each other and support each other. And guess what? We've survived. We're surviving. We're still there.
And are you enjoying it?
I enjoy it because it challenges me. There are times where I'm exhausted and I think, this is too. I'm tired. But no, I wouldn't do anything else.
Just the sheer enjoyment of, like seeing an exhibition. I was there only just over a week ago, I think it was last week, for an exhibition, a painter and a potter. And like the joy on both their faces. One was the talker, the other one was the quiet one.
Yeah.
But everyone being there, everyone like hearing the story and seeing their art. It's bringing people to see their product of what
people want to hear the
passion.
story. People want to hear. That's what I think is the big thing these days. We tell stories. So if ever I get an employee, the first thing I say to them is, we tell story. And I do it naturally. Some people, have to learn it, but it's these people in their work, they tell their stories. And then it is my job to actually get that out of the world and showcase it and highlight it and help people understand the value of it and how important it is that these people that make by hand, make with love, make with kindness, make that are ethical in what they do, how important it is to the bigger picture, to the greater good of all. It's such an important thing, and everyone wants to know the story.
Absolutely. People need to know about it, because what you're doing with all these artists, bringing them together, having them working out the back in their little studios, but like an opportunity for them to actually like sell their product.
To show, because we can all, there are 1,000 little studios all over Melbourne, everywhere with incredibly talented artists in little rooms that aren't being showcased and aren't being shown, and people aren't valuing. It's so important because it's the cycle of life. It's really important. People getting involved, participating, and us all of us doing what we're good at. And what I'm good at is showing this stuff off, is presenting it, and really spotlighting it, and giving worth. I mean, that's what I do. That's my whole purpose. Early 20s, it was all about me. Now it's much more about community.
I want to congratulate you on that. And so I want to get the word out there so people come and support you, because it's important that it all happens. So Thomas, thank you so much for chatting with us today, and congratulations. What a brilliant career you've had.
Thank you. It's been interesting.
Yeah, it certainly has. Thomas Burge, lovely chatting with you today.
Thank you.
I'm David Hunt, and of course you'll see me again real soon. See you later.